Our art director, Allie, sent me a surprising message last week. She said she'd been looking at our website statistics and found that we had this trending article on Work Wisdom Press from 2019, and it was called "Fearless Leadership is Full of Fear." I actually barely remembered writing it. As entrepreneurs, we're always curious when the market expresses an interest like this. So today, we're re-interviewing two of the leaders who were featured in that article. Here we are together 5 years later, exploring the same questions, but also seeking to uncover what additional wisdom the past 5 years have taught us about fearless leadership. Welcome to The Behaviorist with Work Wisdom, where we help you adopt high-performance mindsets, behaviors, communication, and culture. I'm your host, Kedren Crosby. Our intention for the Behaviorist podcast is to share accessible, concrete practices that you can weave into your whole life to begin a shift toward joy and meaningful achievement. We're honored to be joined by two insightful and fearless leaders, Jess King and Sam Bressi. Jess is the executive director at the Steinman Institute for Civic Engagement. Sam is the president and CEO of Lancaster County Community Foundation. Thank you both for exploring this ever-evolving intersection between fear and leadership with me today. Thanks for being here.
Thaness for having us, Kedren.
Oh, my goodness.
We're excited about the conversation.
I couldn't think of two better people to be with right now. In that 2019 article, it was originally published in Central Penn Business Journal. I was writing about this observation I had. There was this notable style of leadership at the time that I was calling fearless leadership. And this category of leaders I felt were characterized by focus on the team and collective good and community. This new style of leader I thought was very courageous, and they challenged the status quo. They were positive deviants in their fields. I was noticing that they were emboldened by working towards justice for many rather than for themselves. And, whether they were working in socially responsible business or they were focused on equitable culture or equitable hiring norms, or even a new way of thinking about strategy, that these fearless leaders needed new levels of self-awareness and constructive assertiveness in order to do the work. They were authentic, they were contagious in their use of positive behavior. So, all these fearless leaders that I was noticing at the time, they were very clear about what their purpose was on the planet, and they had recognized their crucibles that had strengthened them, and they were really connected with their power in healthy ways. So, 2019 feels like several lifetimes ago for all of us. I mean, really, it was only 5 years, but wow, so much. So it was pre-pandemic, pre-George Floyd, before this current round of chaos, executive orders maybe coming out of the federal government. And so I guess what my first question is do we even still see this category of leaders, these fearless leaders? Is this still a classification that we're seeing? I don't know. Let's just talk a little bit about that. Jess, what are you thinking?
I think absolutely.
Okay.
I think the more complicated things get, the more we need this kind of leadership. And really, like when I was thinking about this and this description of it, I don't know if it's that you wrote it, but I was thinking about you and like the leadership that you've shown in starting this business and keeping it going for so many years, and entrepreneurs who take risks all the time without really like having a safety net spelled out or a larger organization ready to kind of like catch the fall. I can't think of more fearless leaders than entrepreneurs. And that feels really hopeful right now, too, because, like, I don't know that our answers are kind of come from, one, like, we just mentioned the federal government. They're not going to all come from, on high or, like, at the federal government. It's going to be dispersed, and it always has been. But going to more leadership that's more grassroots or granular or organizational in behavior, and I can't think of better than entrepreneurs. I'm a little biased, too, considering my background. But
Yeah. I mean, I've been thinking about your family, too. I mean, you were raised in a small business family.
I was,
yeah. And you understand those risks. Okay. There is some interesting data about that, too, with the Edelman Trust Barometer trusting
small business
more than any of the other sectors. So maybe they're well positioned. Thanks for that insight. What are you thinking? Do you feel like this category of fearless leaders, do you think they still exist 5 years later?
Well, I think Jess hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
That this type of leader is more needed and more important and even more valuable in the current climate of chaos and challenge. So people step in. I have thought a lot about this since 2019. We've been through, as a community foundation, what you would describe, I think, as crucible moments where we were taking stands that were, maybe not overly popular in certain circles. And, I had to, organizationally, we had to decide, how do we work through that? What do we learn from it? How do we show up? And one of the things that really struck me, I don't know that I fully grasps the title of your article in 2019, Fearless Leadership is Full of Fear. I've thought a lot about that. And fearless is kind of a ironic term. There's no such thing as fearless. It really is facing fear. It really is leaders who have the courage to stand by their convictions. I think it's all about preparation and purpose, clarity of purpose, understanding the why you're doing something before moving to the what and the how you do it. And once you understand why, I think in the article you point out that it's really about values and it's about showing up in the community for others. So it's about justice in some instances. And so that's really, for us at the Community Foundation, I think we're plugged into our values deeply. And thanks in large part to you and your courageous leadership along with our organization. We lean on our archetype and we lean on our values for everything that we do.
So fearless leadership is still full of fear. And we haven't dropped the fear part. Maybe what we are able to do is amp up the understanding of who we are and our purpose and our values. And that gives us courage to do it afraid.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. So, well, that's actually very hopeful. We still have fearless leaders in the world, and we have some insights about how to do it afraid and still lead in spite of the fear. We're really interested in how we achieve great things and how we have high performance at Work Wisdom and for World Changers. And we believe that we can grow exponentially through struggle, through hard times. So I'm wondering if either of you can give me some insight. How do fearless leaders become strengthened through a fall? Do you have any insights on that? Maybe even what do they need to do or drop in order to harvest and really benefit from the fall or from the failure? Jess, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Oh, man, so many thoughts on this
really?
one.
Do you hate this one?
No, I kind of love it. I love
Okay.
it. I feel like it's like, In my experiences, I feel like the gifts of failure and great uncertainty have led to the times of my life of deepest exploration of wisdom traditions, of prayer, of mindfulness, and the tools that I think have stood the test of time for so many people. And I did that because I had to. And I think like in really, really hard moments, or when, like to Sam's point, like crucible moments, when you have to push beyond the status quo or what's in front of you that's particularly challenging, it creates this like really, it's a gift, and it creates strength. So I think that when I thought through kind of looking back on not just the last 5 years, but the time before that too, that these are the kind of things that showed me what was possible when I lived with more of that kind of, I guess if I was to quantify it or really talk about what I noticed during those times, it was about surrender to more of the unknown and less of the mirage that I have control. And I think like in those moments when you're in such a hard time and you're facing such challenges, it's these moments that show you that you don't have to necessarily depend on your own control or the dependence of your own thinking. That can really give you more strength. So I think that, like, for me, it's been about, it's easy to trick myself into thinking I have it under control or figured out, which I really don't. And so maybe that's the thing that has helped me. Something that I needed to drop was control.
Yeah, and Nathan Furr, professor at INSEAD in Paris, the business school, has found that leaders who successfully move through periods of uncertainty, they actually are more focused on how they frame the uncertainty than that they control it. How they look at this period of uncertainty rather than having control of it. So what can I learn from this, or how can I level up anyhow? And I really appreciate what you're saying about also just sort of being brought to our knees. And, that this humbles us in a way that where we're like, the current tools are not working. I need some new tools. And you grasp and you're open to them.
Yeah. It's not fun when you're in it necessarily, but it's like when you look back on it, it's like, man, I'm glad I had that experience. Yeah. Because I don't know if I'd know it in the same way, like really know it in practice.
And so when we think about those fearless leaders that we need in the future, it's interesting to think about how do they get reps and strengthened from challenge? How do we maybe not even help them too much at the right time? To get strengthened through that. Sam, what are your thoughts on this whole idea of getting strengthened through challenge?
I think I think that we talk about fearless or courageous leadership of an individual, and I think it maybe misses the broader point of having a team, having others. The idea of letting go of control. You can practice that in less threatening environments by building a team and bringing in the right people that you trust as a leader. And if you're doing that and you go back to our strategic planning process and the idea that we are anchored in values, we know what we're trying to achieve. We first and foremost know who we are. So if you look inward and you say, I need to know who I am, to be able to approach anything with courage, I need to know and be anchored in I'm comfortable with me. And this is my purpose. And bringing an organization around that purpose and trusting individuals in that organization to take the lead and to take up, the slack when you're giving away some control, I think positions you to be more resilient and to be able to kind of guide through challenging times. And so I think what we did organizationally for 10 years before 2019 really led us to our ability organizationally to learn from failure, to learn from challenge, to lean into hard conversations. And I will say, I used to say, we wanted to, I wanted to hear all the negatives, and I wanted to, I wanted to be in the moment, and I would not make it personal. I'm here to tell you that courageous, fearless leadership is personal. And no matter how hard you fight to make it, it's just my profession, keep it in a box, it comes to you. It hits you in the heart. It hits you in the soul. And I think you have to process that. So the learning that we've done really came months, if not years, after the moment, being able to assess from a distance and think about what would I like to do moving forward. And we've really leaned into the word curiosity, being more curious, to be able to bridge divides and authentically invite perspectives.
So powerful.
As you're talking about that too, Sam, and the idea of building a team, I'm just thinking about the team that you built over that time too, and the gelling and the relationship that you have. I can imagine how much that added to your resiliency in the moments of challenge.
I can tell you that without it,
yeah,
the fear would have consumed me personally.
Yeah.
So again, I'm just kind of reflecting on some of my personal experience and realizing that it wasn't just my personal experience. Although I was the CEO of the organization, it was diffused throughout the whole organization. Everybody took a piece, and we welcomed strength from each other. We were stronger together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is so powerful, because if we need fearlessness to move into uncharted territories, the question then becomes, can we create cultures of fearlessness? How do we instill and inspire fearlessness in others? And maybe even when might it be wise to create a culture of fearlessness? What do you think? Jess, you focus very much on civic engagement, civic discourse, and Sam, you focus on community. So what are your thoughts about how we might go about creating cultures of contagious fearlessness in healthy ways, not recklessness, right? We don't want that, but fearlessness. What's one thing? Do you have one?
As I was thinking about what I've learned on the personal front about how control actually doesn't help fearlessness, and giving up into it is actually a big part of leading in fearlessness. It was like, how could I apply that to a team? And I thought about, trying to control or have overly strong expectations of others doesn't always yield a whole lot. Like when you think about that kind of control of whether it's parenting or it's in an organizational dynamic, controlling others or having having high expectations is different. I feel like there's a needle to thread in this, but the control piece doesn't. And so what does? First thing on my list is curiosity too, as Sam said, and appreciation, and about transparency and what it feels like when you're going through this, or if you've been through that, to be candid about it and to be willing to share it with other people.
Yeah. It really does inspire them, doesn't it? Yeah. And normalizes it. Yeah, that they're not unusual for being afraid. Yeah, that's so powerful. What are you thinking about?
Yeah, I go right away organizationally to understanding the why. Why are we doing what we're doing, and what is our purpose? Having clarity of purpose. I think the idea of, and if we rewind, Kedren, in one of our planning sessions, we landed on fearlessness as a value. That has evolved into courage as a value, because we've thought deeply about the word, and we're cautious about the words that we use, and we realize that fear is fear, and courage is plowing through fear. But really anchoring an organization in values, understanding the purpose of what you're trying to achieve, and really the why of that before the how. I think a lot of organizations, a lot of leaders think a lot about the what and the how of their work and less about the why. And I think if you want to build an organization, and an organization that's ready for crucible moments and resilient, I think having an organization that clearly understands the why of what they're doing leads to conversations that bolster fearlessness, courage, and willingness to take risk and to move forward despite headwinds.
Yeah.
I love that you brought up courage, and that's a word that I've meditated on quite a lot over the last number of years. And I love the root of it, which is heart, So to your point about of values and why, that's it always brings it back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do wonder about kryptonite for fearless leaders, especially in times of chronic uncertainty with heights of distress, when the stakes are high, when relationships are unraveling. Is there a kryptonite for even our most courageous, fearless leaders? Jess, in 2019, when I asked you this question, you said ego, you said comparison to others, and you said questioning your purpose. And I thought,
brilliant.
Mic drop. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So I think what I'm wondering now is, have the last 5 years just reinforced those three elements that are the enemies of courageous, fearless leadership: ego, comparison to others, questioning your purpose, or are there others? Have we learned about some more kryptonite? What are your thoughts? Sam, do you have any thoughts on this one?
I think Jess nailed it, and
Yeah.
that is a mic drop. I just wrote down here quick self, going it alone. I think leaders make the mistake of maybe trying to protect their teams when they should be embracing their teams.
Yeah, that's right.
And I also think that you need to find encouragement. So you need to be able to replenish your reserves of energy and of conviction and of passion. And you need to find your own way to do that. One of the ways that I did that was I actually, you coached me. And once a month we had a conversation, a really deep conversation about, the why.
Yeah.
And the what and how I was feeling. So understanding, and you should, I guess this broadly, if you're on a board or if you're engaged with individuals who are going through challenges, being a kind of a breath of energy, being reaching out, saying, I hear you, I see you, I care about you, is really helpful. It's important always for us as human beings to get positive feedback, but in times of challenge, it's just massively more important. So I think kryptonite could be, part of it might be doing it alone. It goes back to ego and, not building that support network. And also back to going it alone, like making sure your team is with you, making sure the people who are closest there to understand that you're not alone, that we're all going through this together.
That is so good.
Nailed it.
So valuable. Thinking about how do we build a community of whether it's our team or our board or either friends, how do we build a community of people who will be there for us to support us and encourage us, because we are emotionally contagious and we can give each other energy and courage and fearlessness when we need it most. That's brilliant. In addition to, so I think we've got a lot of mic dropping at this point, because we've got ego, we've got comparison to others, we've got questioning your purpose, we've got going it alone is definitely dangerous for leaders. And also sacrifice syndrome. You brought up renewal. And so when we are leaders, particularly powerful leaders, we have this power stress, which is heavier than typical distress because of the stakes are high and we're often making decisions kind of alone. So power stress can lead to sacrifice syndrome. The way that we mitigate sacrifice syndrome is through the renewal cycle. This is all the work of Richard Boyatzis at Case Western, who we love Case Western, don't we? Positive organizational behavior. So to Sam's point, making sure that we are doing something intentionally to get renewed. The renewal cycle has 3 characteristics. Let's see if I can remember. It has to have some sort of mindfulness as part of our renewal cycle. It has to have hope in it, and it needs to have compassion, self or other kind of compassion. So really, really great points on how we can stave off the kryptonite of fearless leadership.
Maybe just a note too that like a renewal cycle can be so simple, like small cycles, like, you know, not necessarily going to like a retreat somewhere or, you know, taking a whole, whatever it is, but like going outside and noticing the buds starting to emerge on the plants, even in February, or, you know, going to church, even if you're not a church going person, and remembering what it's like to sing with people, if that's something that you did in traditional. So,
Yeah, I love renewal cycles and how varied they are for different fearless leaders. Yeah, you don't need a sabbatical all the time.
Exactly.
But sometimes it's great.
It'd be great, but if you can't make that work.
But what about, could we start a work wisdom community choir? Would that be okay? And sing like Chapel Rowan? And I don't know.
I feel like you've written some songs that could be like.
Yeah, let's get Joey in here with his guitar.
Work Wisdom Anthem.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, we've got our alma mater from Work Wisdom Academy. Okay, well, let's think about the past 5 years. So wisdom. What have we learned from the past 5 years? What's the most important thing that the past 5 years have taught you about fearless leadership? What's the most important thing? Sam, is there something in particular that you would add to this?
You know, I think fearless leadership is not for the faint of heart. And it's about it. I think if as a leader, I think if you are putting something out there, you're doing something, you have a why, you know your purpose. I think it's easier to kind of be fearless. I can't imagine like getting out of bed in the morning to go to work, to grind out a few extra dollars and maybe kind of trim the fat off the staff and cut, you know, like the worst days as a leader, you know, you're having to leave somebody go, you're having to have a hard conversation, you're in the community and you're maybe feel threatened or attacked. I just can't imagine dealing with any of that. I think if my purpose was me and advancing the Sam Bressi show, or making a few extra dollars, I don't think I could get out of the bed in the morning. So, yeah, I think, again, from my perspective, I think what's been reinforced over the last 5 years is purpose. That if your purpose is about something bigger than you, you're reaching for something, for justice, for others, for community, I think you can do hard things.
Okay. And actually, the neuroscience proves that. Yeah. So if we think about the high level of construal, the sort of why is this meaningful? Why is this important? The sort of conceptual aspect of anything that is more inspiring and motivating for us. So as fearless leaders, we need it for ourselves, but we also need it for our communities and the people we're trying to motivate and bringing them back to Why is this important?
I think there's one other thing.
Yeah.
that as I'm thinking about the last 5 years. And it's odd to say it here because here we are, like patting ourselves on the back. Such fearless leaders we are.
I'm the one patting you too on the back.
but you don't get pats on the back too often. There's not always a commensurate return personally in kind of leading in a courageous way through a crucible moment. It's not always, from the outside, it's maybe a little harder to recognize. And so again, if your love language is affirmation and you need to be reaffirmed that this is not the direction you want to go.
Yeah.
So I think, again, it falls back to those networks of individuals who truly understand and who you're plugging in and they're hearing the struggle that happens along the way. I think it's really important to have those networks.
Yeah, boy, that is such a good point. If you need credit, this fearless leadership is probably not going to be sustainable for you. Yeah, even last week I got to have a crucial conversation with someone. Anyhow, I won't go into it on the air, but it was important to have that conversation. And there will be no credit, but good things will come of it. And it's amazing what you can accomplish when you don't care who gets the credit. I think that is really important for fearless leaders to think about.
I would echo that. Thanks for bringing that up, Sam. It was Sarah Colantonia who gave me some advice. I can't remember, somewhere maybe past 5 years ago, but it was in that whole point of like, I was fearful of a space where I knew I was going to get a lot of negative feedback. And Sarah helped me really kind of keep that in perspective and gave me some tools of thinking about how to keep that in check. But the balance to it that she coached me on that I hadn't really thought before is like, part of the goal is dropping and not paying too much attention to all the negative stuff, but you have to do the same with the positive too, which was like, as someone who really does thrive on affirmation, that was like quite a lesson for me in how to show up and just drop some of that, I think, to your point, Sam, because I think you can't get in it and I was in public service during George Floyd, working for a city, and this isn't a space where you're going to get pats on the back, and there's so much angst and pain all around. But it was a good way for me to keep it in perspective of both the positive and the negative. Because, I think you can ignore that so often at your own peril of like, ignore the negative, but then hold on to the positive. But somehow there's a balance in it to just let most of it go.
Yeah, the Zen koan that we often talk about is that so. The monk, I don't know, you've probably both heard it from me. We've got it on our YouTube channel. Follow Work Wisdom on YouTube, and you would be able to watch that. But yeah, to get to inner authority, where we're the one valuing ourselves, we have to drop both the accolades as well as the attacks. Yeah. And so that's a tough place to get to.
This might be worthy of cutting for editing, but I have to say, one of the moments where kind of just the light bulb started to go off is I was here and we were speaking and I used the restroom and I looked in the mirror and in the reflection in the mirror in the restroom at Work Wisdom is a part of a Mother Teresa quote, and it simply says, "Forgive them anyway."
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, what the higher power is. I don't like that. That's not how I approach the world, but that what felt like divine intervention for me, to kind of see in the reflection with my face in the reflection, forgive them anyway. And understanding, again, I now have the full quote, which is beautiful, hanging in my home office. But the idea of, and it wasn't even needing to forgive, but really it motivated me to be more curious and to really say, how did you come to the way you feel? You know, how did you get there? What's the process? Because people they're authentic to themselves. And so if you can lean into curiosity, you can actually build bridges that you might not have thought possible. But the quote was very inspirational to me.
Yeah. I wonder if fearless leaders need to have some capability with forgiveness. And you and I podcasted on that topic 8 years ago. Forgiveness.
That's wild.
Yeah. So it is interesting to think about, can you be sustained? Can you be a sustainable, courageous, fearless leader if you don't learn to let go? You know, if you learn to forgive them anyway, then you can keep doing this work. But otherwise, it might just eat you alive. Yeah. Okay.
I think that's true. And I think it's from a longevity, from being able to get up day after day, year after year, you can't hold on to grudges.
That's
right.
You've got to be in the moment. You've got to be giving folks the benefit of the doubt and forgiving them anyway.
Usually takes me a couple days to get there, but having
same.
it painted in the bathroom
longer.
is very helpful for me.
Is it painted backwards so you can read it when you're looking in the mirror?
It
Yeah,
is.
and I also love that you brought that up because Ayanna Ehrman painted that for us. And Ayanna was in the original 2019 article.
Oh, no
She was the
kidding.
third
cool.
leader
Oh, wow.
from that article. So you brought it the whole way around.
That was unintentional, but
She's
but
in
poetic.
DC now.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Well, we're learning a lot about fearless leadership. So, what would you say is one habit that fearless leaders might be able to adopt to foster healthy fearlessness? A habit. Do you have one?
I was thinking a lot about, it feels trite because I've said things in this vein already, but it's about watching our thoughts, you know? And in Zen meditation, it's really just about the noticing the thoughts and letting it go. And a teacher gave me good advice on this not too long ago, that labeling the thoughts can be helpful. And so I have noticed just in mindfulness and meditation, seeing how often I label planning, worry, other things that basically are derivatives of fear. And so there's this, a habit for me has been noticing and naming the thoughts and then also practicing letting them go, and how much those thoughts actually contribute to fear and fear-based behavior. But noticing them and naming them. And also just quantifying them, this whole you manage what you measure. To me, this was a certain amount of holy cow, 80% of my thoughts are based in some kind of fear. And I wouldn't have necessarily pinned that. But just seeing how often it just kept coming up. Well, there's planning again. There it is again. And just how much that has helped me be gracious, I think, with myself, and also recognize, I think, that our thoughts are just our thoughts. And if I don't want to build a behavior belief system out of those thoughts, then naming them and letting them go feels like a really helpful practice.
Such a great habit.
Can't top that, but I can say that, working with Kedren over the years, she encouraged me to journal. And I actually didn't follow through for quite a while. And a few other people had pushed me, and I was actually having lunch with Daniel Wuba at Millersville. And Daniel is a meticulous journaler and very, very, very committed to it. And in that conversation, it kind of sparked me. He gave me a journal that I could start with. And I started doing what I believe is called a gratitude journal. So really thinking about the day's events, what's happening, and then really pulling out what I'm thankful for. And even in the really bad days, pulling something out that I can say, hey, I really am lucky. I appreciate this. And so I do this every morning for a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes, depending on the day. And then about once a quarter, I go back and I highlight some of the things that I've been thinking. And it's just enough time that I have enough time and space to kind of really reassess, even in the moment, like what was going on in December and January and the start of February, and how and maybe reframe it just ever so slightly. And it's been it's been a sanity saver at times.
I love that. And also the looking back and reframing things through the lens of gratitude. So you're in it on a daily basis, but you're also remembering from a place of gratitude. It's really powerful. Nice.
I love that. I love all of those practices. I'm thinking about how can we make this concrete and applied and helpful for our listeners. And I'm listening to everything that we're thinking about in terms of letting go of certainty and noticing what is and what we're grateful for, and having courage and knowing our values. And I'm just trying to think about the people that we all know in the community who are going through tough times right now. Would you have any advice for them? I know it's hard to give advice right now, but would you give them some courage, or what would you say to them that they might want to experiment with as they are trying to grapple with being fearless right now?
I was thinking to some degree that these conversations come with a certain amount of assumed privilege, and I'm thinking a lot about the hierarchy of needs and how much, I think there's actually some sort of thing happening at the square just about now with standing up with people from Church World Service and then a concert for refugees, that there's like a hierarchy of needs in this too, and that when your basic fundamentals are threatened, that's like a different kind of fear, but takes a lot of the same muscle, right? But also like leaning on each other. So being ready to stand next to people, being ready to be with people in vulnerable spaces, but also being able to ask for help.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think that's, we have community in our name, the Lancaster County Community Foundation, and community is a really powerful thing. So those who are in the midst of a fearful, challenging situation, lean on community, lean on your community. Don't be afraid to ask. Maybe it's the first time maybe you don't have community. You haven't built that muscle. Don't be afraid to ask. People care. People want to help. People I have rarely, I'll say, met an individual who wouldn't take time to try to help if you were asking for help. And so I really believe that leaning on community is really important. I do think that from a longer term, bigger picture standpoint, that really building, so we have 5 organizational values, integrity, relationships, equity, innovation, and courage. I've often said, and we talk a lot about, the first 4 values come first, and our big questions and our why. What are we doing? Courage, fearlessness comes as a follow-in to kind of push you and get you just to that next level. So I think I think building the structure, the strategy, the culture to enable fearlessness is really important, and that takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of effort, and it takes help from qualified, brilliant people like yourself. But in the moment, right now, if you don't have the system set, make a phone call, invite somebody to listen to you, and have a cup of coffee with someone and share your challenge. It'll be a kind of step one to building towards fearlessness.
And to match that for the people who aren't feeling the need for, they aren't feeling depleted or in need of help or challenged by fearlessness, I think, even if they're listening to this, to like how to be in a space to offer that to somebody else. What is that saying that like, be kind because you never know what people are, the great challenges that people are facing. It's always true. It's always true. And so how to be a person who can show up from a place of curiosity and listening, even if you're the one who isn't facing the fear.
Yeah, I feel like we've uncovered a lot more in the last 5 years about fearless leadership. We've decided it is still full of fear, but I think we've learned a few things. I think we've learned, especially this idea that building cultures that are connected, cultures of communities that are fearless is important. I think we've learned about team and sort of diffusing the uncertainty to make us more resilient, more anti-fragile. I think we've learned about renewal over the last 5 years. Anything else we've learned that we want to make sure that we add into this podcast to update our 2019 article? Okay, I think we got it. We've got it. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. It's such a privilege. I'm going to start crying to work with both of you.
Thank you for doing this for leaders.
I'm a regular listener. We need to make sure people are tuning in. It's really, there are lots of important subjects. You work wisdom and your leadership in this community and beyond. I know it's global, but we so appreciate you. I've often said that Kedren Crosby is part of the team of the Community Foundation. We wouldn't be the Community Foundation that we are without our board, our staff, and our trusted friends and advisors. And you're top on that list.
You're here. Isn't your mission to like equip world changers?
Yeah.
I think you have plenty of evidence that it's working.
Okay.
It's working.
First decade down. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It is such a privilege to help both of you. So I'm grateful to both of you for being part of this movement of revolutionizing achievement. Thank you, listeners, for downloading The Behaviorist. I'm not crying. We hope you'll subscribe. Please contact us through our website, workwisdomllc.com. You can enjoy Work Wisdom Press, old articles from 2019 that spontaneously go viral 5 years later, Work Wisdom Productions. You can ask questions, suggest topics that you'd like to explore in future episodes. As is our custom, we will leave you with a quote from Anthony DeMello. What is love? The total absence of fear.